Welcome back everyone to the video, and today we are grading every single quarterback entering the 2023 or 2024 NFL season. And so I want to be very clear at the start of this, just clear up a few things. So first off, whenever we do this, as far as the grading system, this is not a hard set number one, number two, number three, and so on. Basically, I'm not actually ranking these quarterbacks as power rankings. I will be doing that, but that won't be till probably a month from now, toward July, toward training camp, and we have a bit more information on how the offenses are really stacking up, basically. So I just want to kind of clear that up. There isn't going to be a hard set certain number in each tier. That will be balanced out more for the rankings. So I just want to get that out of the way. Second, also, because there are rookies on this, I know a lot of you it varies on how you think rookies should be graded entering the season they haven't played in yet. For instance, JJ McCarthy's on here. Some people would rather me probably make a rookie tier and put all the rookies in the bottom rather than have him over someone like Derek Carr, even though he hasn't played yet. Not Derek Carr, but JJ McCarthy. What I'm going to do is I'm not going to make a rookie tier. I am going to rank rookies over certain quarterbacks, but for this, I'm going to factor in their surroundings and their offensive weapons. This is not going to be grading on just the player individually because, it'd be a lot different then as far as great quarterbacks on not great teams are held back a little bit. That happens sometimes. If we were doing it individually, then yeah, that wouldn't really matter. For this, it is going to matter. So some great quarterbacks that might be in a pretty bad situation this year are going to be lower on the list. I'm going to be factoring that in there because that at the end of the day does affect their performance. That's at least how I want to do it. If you guys would rather do it a different way or just whatever, you can comment that down below. But just for this video, at least this early in the offseason, that is how I'm going to do it. But you can always change as the offseason goes on. We're going to do more of these. But for the first one, we're going to do it like this, and starting with Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson is going to go S tier. I don't really know who would disagree with this at this point. It's on an MVP season. Nothing around him has really changed. He still has great weapons. Zay Flowers entering year 2. They drafted, I think Devontae Walker from North Carolina. He might see the field a little bit too. They lose Odell, but, that's not really the biggest loss, to be honest. So, yeah, I still like Lamar a ton. He's definitely in the S tier. Next is Bryce Young, and look, first off, let me just kind of, plug my other series I'm doing. I'm doing, an in-depth, every team gets a video kind of thing for the offseason, breaking down every team, hour-long video for their upcoming season. I just did the Panthers, and the next team is coming up very shortly. For the Panthers, I said this then, I have to stick to it to be consistent with my rankings. I have Bryce Young as B tier. Yes, I am a Panthers fan. But if you have been around my channel, I've been critical of Bryce Young. I'm not going to make excuses for him and stuff. I think it's unfair to grade his rookie year strictly on him because there are things outside of his control that really affected his play. Going to this year, I think a lot of those things, like a horrible O-line, horrible weapons, horrible coaching, a lot of it's been cleaned up. It's not going to be perfect, but it is going to be cleaned up. So I have him being B tier, bouncing back, not having the craziest year by any means, but definitely being a step up from, probably a D tier quarterback last year. So I have him being B tier. Next is Jalen Hurts. I'm going to put him in the A tier. I don't think he's quite S tier. I think going into last season, coming off that Super Bowl appearance, I had him S tier. I think it was a little too much too soon. Hurts has shown a ton. Last season, I think the coaching really disrupted the I don't know what to really say as far as what it disrupted, the consistency, I guess, of that offense from the year prior. Before it was every game they put up a ton of yards, ton of points. Last season it was very discombobulated, even though they did have a nice win streak going, but ultimately it caught up to them when they just had that late season implosion and got bounced first round. So I have Hurts A tier. I'm very hopeful that Kellen Moore can really change that offense back to what we saw in 2022. But until we see it, I can't really rank it much higher, so I'm going to keep Hurts in the A tier. Still a great grade, though. Next is Baker Mayfield, and look, I love Baker Mayfield. I've said that, I'm pretty sure in every video I've ever talked about Baker Mayfield, actually. I like him a lot. I felt that the Panthers did him very dirty when he was in Carolina. So I'm actually going to put him B tier, though. Last year he had an A tier season. The reason I'm bringing him down is because they lose Dave Canales, or Dave Canales, however you pronounce it. And I think that is going to hurt the offense a bit because I think he did a ton for Baker. And while, they still have Mike Evans there, you have Chris Godwin going back to the slot. You don't really lose anything player-wise, but we saw with the Eagles what different coaching can do to great offenses. It can disrupt them when you break up what they had going before and put someone new in there. I don't see Baker having a bad season, but I don't see him having another, what, like 35 touchdown year, whatever he just had. So I think it's going to be a little bit less than that. I'm going to have him B tier. Not a bad season, but I think that he's going to cool off just a little bit, but still be a good quarterback. And the next is Caleb Williams. So again, this is the first rookie. I'm going to put Caleb Williams B tier. And I know some people might not like that. They want me to have him A tier. First off, just because he's a rookie, I'm going to be more conservative anyway on the ranking because we haven't seen him. Second, Caleb Williams, I think it seems like people either just can't stand him and he's going to be a bust, or they absolutely love him, he's going to be like generational, it seems like, or one of the best in the league. And personally, at least in year one, I don't see Caleb being like league altering, in my opinion. Which Bears fans might not like hearing that, but what they probably will like hearing is that Caleb doesn't have to be league altering and like this generational quarterback. The Bears have done an excellent job of building that team up, especially on the offense. I mean, Caleb Williams really just has to be pretty average to find a lot of success in that offense. I mean, you have DJ Moore, you have Keenan Allen, you drafted Rome Odunze, you have Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett, D'Andre Swift. I mean, it's a pretty loaded offense. It's not going to take someone having this otherworldly rookie year to, put up all these numbers. It's not needed. Caleb just needs to show that he is going to be their guy, put together a pretty solid season, and they're probably a playoff team, realistically speaking, at least in my opinion, especially because they're in the NFC. So he's going to go B tier. If I was more aggressive with my ranking as far as rookies go, I'd probably put him A tier, but I'm going to be a bit more conservative and put him in B tier. I think he'll be good, though, still in year one. Next is Brock Purdy. I'm going to put him in A tier. Again, Brock Purdy is in one of the best offenses in the entire league. I will say, though, if they happen to lose Brandon Ayuk or Debo, or maybe even both, who knows, some kind of like blockbuster trade, that is going to hurt Purdy's ranking, at least to me, because Purdy's a great quarterback. I don't want this to come off as like me like not saying he's a great quarterback, but I do think, when you're in an offense that good, only so much is asked of you, and so when that's going to be taken away, it's going to be a bit of an Purdy's have to adapt a bit, basically, to kind of make some plays happen that might not happen anymore with guys like Debo gone and Brandon Ayuk gone. But he still has McCaffrey, and as of right now, look, he still has Debo and Brandon Ayuk. So as of right now, if they're not there, it's all speculation. At least as of right now, the time of recording this. So Purdy's staying A tier. I think if like he happens to have this crazy offensive shift and like they lose some guys, it could hurt him. But they even drafted Ricky Pearsall, and I think he's actually pretty good, and that's going to fill a hole if they lose Debo or Brandon Ayuk. So I'm not too worried about it. Just want to throw it out there, though. Purdy's going in A tier. Next is J.J. McCarthy. J.J. McCarthy's also going B tier, and a lot of people might not like that because of just, I think a lot of people just aren't very high on J.J. McCarthy being taken in the first round or in the NFL at all. But the thing is, if he went to a team like, I don't know, I'm trying to think, like Washington, I think there would be a lot of issues because McCarthy is not the athlete they need to help kind of elevate some other guys and make some plays happen. But in Minnesota, I think it's a much different fit. You have, Justin Jefferson, probably the best wide receiver in the entire league. Jordan Addison, one of the NFL touchdown leaders as a rookie last season. You'll have TJ Hawkinson coming back soon, probably like midway through the year or something like that. You have playmakers. You have Aaron Jones out of the backfield. So kind of like Caleb Williams, I don't think a ton will be asked of J.J. McCarthy that he's not already able to do. I don't think the Vikings have to get desperate and need McCarthy to do all these, game-saving things. I don't think it's really needed. I think he just has to play, just like Caleb Williams, play solid. Don't do too much. Don't play hero ball. Just, really stay in the system. And I think one of McCarthy's, strengths is playing within a system and in the scheme. So I think it's a great fit for Minnesota. If he was not in Minnesota, there'd be some much different conversations to be had about him. But I think he's going to be solid in year one. He's in a great spot. Next is Trevor Lawrence. And look, I love Trevor Lawrence. I'm going to be honest. This dude went to like Waffle House after a playoff win. Like, I love Trevor Lawrence. And as a player, he's fantastic as well, obviously. But I'm going to put him B tier. And look, in the past, I've had Trevor A tier in basically everything I've done. Last season, I think he was really hindered by that injury. I mean, even just looking at his numbers, like they went down after that ankle injury. And he was just, playing through pain, just wasn't himself. It wasn't the best we've seen that Trevor Lawrence can really be. And so the reason I have him in the B tier and not in the A tier bouncing back immediately is because, you lose Calvin Ridley, who was, kind of solid form, a little inconsistent, but still good. You draft Brian Thomas Jr., which I think is great. And you also get Gabe Davis in free agency. So, you have offensive weapons, but it really sounds like the coaching isn't going to become run heavy, but they are going to put more of a focus on it. Like they went out and said like they don't want Etienne taking the bulk of the carries. Like they want Bigsby to be more of a factor in the run game. So to me, it's like, Etienne wasn't really having to do everything himself anyway. He's a huge threat in the receiving game. He's great as a runner. He can kind of do both. I feel like Tank Bigsby is a bit better in the running game. Not that he's bad in the receiving game, but I think his strengths are more in the running game. So I kind of see them maybe not going to the run more, but in a situation where it's like you like a 2nd and 5, and maybe they would have passed before, just to run the ball again, maybe put Tank in there. I don't think they're going to become run heavy. Again, I want to be very clear on that, but I do think it's going to look a bit different with them going out of their way to have a more of like a 2 running back room going on, like 1-2 punch or whatever. So I have Trevor Lawrence a B tier. There's no doubt in my mind he can bounce back from last year, but again, being a bit more safe in my predictions, he's going to go in the B tier. Next is Joe Burrow, and so I want to make one thing clear. He's going to go in S tier, but if this was a ranking, it's a little bit of a, teaser, for my actual rankings, he's going to be on the low end of C tier. Like, I'm not going to put him number 2, number 3 going into this year. I mean, I love Joe Burrow. I think he's one of the best in the league when healthy, but he has to be healthy. And I don't want to call him injury prone. I think there is certainly an injury history building up now, and this is a huge year for Joe Burrow to stay healthy and prove that he can play a full season again, because when he does, he's great. Super Bowl appearance, AFC Championship appearance. I mean, he's awesome when he plays full seasons, but he's got to play full seasons. He's got to stay healthy. I think the Bengals have done a good job of surrounding him with a lot better of an O-line than what he came to the league with, for sure. So hopefully that helps. But the reason I have him so high despite missing time with the injury is because in that offense, and what Joe Burrow has shown us when healthy, there aren't too many better than him. So he's still going to go S tier for me. Some people might have him like an A tier because of injuries. That's valid. I can see that. I just think S tier is really where he belongs when healthy. And I'm not predicting this as if anyone gets hurt. So that's why he's S tier for me. Although I will say losing Higgins will be a little bit of a hit. But Tremaine Burton they drafted, I think, can fill that void if Higgins has to leave pretty well. He's a phenomenal athlete. But Burrow's going S tier. Jordan Love is going A tier. I think Jordan Love's awesome. I made a list like way back in February, and honestly, I'm going to keep it real. It wasn't that good. It was like a too early quarterback list. Was not that good. I had a lot of different comments on that. Some people liked it, some people really didn't like it. But some of the comments, I think like a couple in particular, didn't like me having Jordan Love in like a top 10 or top 12 area. I can't remember what I did, but it was somewhere in the upper echelon. And to be honest with you, I'm going to kind of stand on that because I think Jordan Love showed a ton of promise. Like, if you go back and watch him in week 3 and then week 11, I mean, he grew exponentially in 1 year and then managed to take that super young offense to the playoffs. So in my eyes, if there was any season for him to struggle, it would have been last year. And we saw him struggle, but then we also saw him turn it around in 1 year and nearly make the NFC Championship. He almost beat the 49ers in San Francisco, and he did beat Dallas in Dallas. So those are huge wins. I think Jordan Love is going to be one of the better quarterbacks in the league this year. That offense is young. They're only going to get better. So I really love him as a player and his situation. He's going A tier. Kirk Cousins. Okay, so I'm actually going to go ahead and move Aaron Rodgers right here. I'm going to do this at the same time. We're just going to put Rodgers and Cousins both in B tier. Now, this is going to be incredibly inaccurate as of right now, if they both bounce back from their injuries. Like, Kirk Cousins last year was honestly probably an S-tier quarterback before he got hurt. He was on like an MVP type of trajectory. I can't speak there. And before he got hurt. Same with Rodgers. This guy's a phenomenal player. Like, his second to last season in Green Bay was MVP season. Year before that was MVP, like back-to-back MVP player. But at the end of the day, nothing's really guaranteed coming back from injuries, especially Achilles injuries when you are, you're not young. Especially Rodgers. He's a 40-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles injury, and I really hope he, does and is fully healthy. But as I've done with, Trevor Lawrence and been pretty conservative, and same with Caleb Williams, even Baker Mayfield, I'm going to put both of them in B tier for right now. But here's the thing. This is June. I'm going to do this video again as my final draft, per se, in July. By then, if we hear enough from training camp that they're back to full mobility, looking good, I'll be a bit more aggressive with my rankings after that. I also apologize for any background noise right now. I think someone's cutting the grass or something. But so that's why I have them both in B tier. I think, otherwise, Rodgers, I think when healthy, this dude, he has Garrett Wilson. They drafted, Malachi Corley, I believe. And I can't remember their other receiver, but it Brees Hall out of the backfield. They have a great offense. I think it's a bit boomer bust, but I think it still has potential to be a very, very good offense. And then Kirk Cousins may as well have just, like, descended from the clouds to Atlanta, because they've been waiting for a quarterback to elevate that entire team after being held back by bad quarterback play for the past few years. So again, if he's back and fully healthy, he's probably at least A tier. And I will correct that. I will wait to do this video into training camp and see how everybody's looking, and then do a bit of a more aggressive ranking by then. But yeah, they're both B tier for right now. And now, to totally contradict myself, Anthony Richardson's going in A tier. And no, I'm not joking. But here's the thing. He's not super old. He didn't have an Achilles injury. And he's already at 95% back and healthy, and we're in June. So I am fully expecting him to be perfectly fine, 100% come week 1. And I'm putting him A tier because this guy's potential is through the roof. Again, I've said this before in past videos, he was seen as a pretty raw prospect. And when he played last year, granted a very small sample size, he did not look as raw as a prospect or as a player as people, I think, made him out to be. He looks phenomenal. I think he has all the tools, especially physically, to be one of the better quarterbacks in the entire NFL. I'm having him in A tier. Consider that like my big aggressive pick, I guess, in this video. Next is Kyler Murray. I love Kyler Murray. I just did a video on him just a couple days ago, or maybe yesterday, I can't even remember now. But he's going to go in B tier. And I think at the end of the day, I made that video because I thought the Cardinals offense is going to be really good. Like, you have Marvin Harrison Jr., you have Michael Wilson, who had a very solid rookie year, even though it was very quiet. You have Trey McBride, you have Zay Jones. And I think that's great. I don't think it's enough to put you over the guys in A tier, especially with what they've shown either in past years or with the guys they have around them, other than Richardson, which is like my kind of aggressive pick, I guess. So Kyler's going B tier. I think he can totally hit A tier this year, if he stays healthy and if that offense is dynamic as I expect it to be. But as of right now, he is going to stay in the B tier. Next is Geno Smith. He's going to go into the B tier as well. I think Geno's very solid and not much more, to be honest. I wouldn't say he's bad or, a below average quarterback. I think he is pretty much just an average quarterback. Like, he makes some nice plays, he makes some mistakes, doesn't do anything to really elevate the team, but he doesn't really hurt the team either. He's just kind of right in the middle, and that's how I'm going to rank him. He's just going to be B tier. Next is Mahomes. Mahomes is S tier. Not going to spend any time on that. Next is Justin Herbert. Herbert is going to go in the A tier. Here's the thing. So Herbert's kind of a weird one. I kind of mentioned at the beginning of the video that, if a surrounding quarterback doesn't have a whole lot, even though he individually is great, it's going to hurt the ranking. And it doesn't hurt him technically in this because it's grading, but in like my power rankings for quarterbacks, where it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, it is going to affect him then. He's not going to be as high as some people might have him or want him to be, or we've seen he can be. Because at the end of the day, as great as Herbert is, you got Ladd McConkey, and unless Quentin Johnston bounces back a ton, there really isn't a lot of people I'm pointing to in that offense and saying he's going to be a huge factor for him in the receiving game. Like, I love Herbert, but the lack of talent around him is going to have to affect him unless someone steps up. So, still though, I think he's going to be an A tier quarterback because he's going to be passing the ball a ton. I don't see them becoming a running team, but it's not going to be the Herbert we've seen a couple seasons ago, I think. They don't have the talent there unless people step up. Then next is Jayden Daniels. Jayden Daniels is going to go B tier. I think he's going to be solid. I think he's going to struggle a lot though, to be honest. I think it's going to be a step up from Bryce Young's year, but similar in the ways that we see a lot of flashes. I think some people just hate on Bryce Young and say there were no flashes. That's just not true, to be honest. I mean, he showed plenty of promise in a horrible situation. I think Daniels shows even more flashes and in a not as bad situation. I think just kind of how I see it. I don't think he's a playoff team. I think Washington, honestly, will probably be one of the worst teams in the league this year. But I think for the situation he's going to be in with the type of athlete he is, it's going to be evident this guy is going to be good as long as he gets a bit more talent and depth around him at like wide receiver, because Luke McCaffrey has potential, but he probably shouldn't be starting year 1, at least in my opinion. So he's going to go B tier. Then next is Dak. Dak's going to go A tier. It really sucks because Dak, I think, every year has some people, making fun of him, which I do sometimes, not going to lie. But I think he's a great player. He seems like a good guy too, but he just doesn't like, I don't want to say he plays into like the jokes about him, but no matter how promising of a year this guy has, he just cannot prove people wrong in the playoffs. I mean, it just keeps happening. And to be honest with you, that's why I don't usually pick the Cowboys to go super far in the playoffs, is because I don't trust Dak to rise in the playoffs. I think he can win a game, but not much more than that. If someone would have told me last year that he would have lost first round to Jordan Love's first year starting in the NFL after the season Dak just had, I would have thought there was no possible way, especially in Dallas. But I mean, you get trampled. It's not even close. So, I think it sucks for Dak. I like Dak, but he's not a postseason player, it seems. But as far as regular season goes, he's pretty good. And CeeDee Lamb's really good too, and he's in a good situation. So Dak's still going A tier, but I wish he could be better in the playoffs. And the next is CJ Stroud. He is going S tier for me. I think Stroud showed so much in year one. I think he's only going to get better. You add Stephon Diggs to that offense. And here's one thing I'm going to say too is they added Stephon Diggs, and I feel like people have all of a sudden said like, oh yeah, Diggs, new wide receiver 1. He's going to put up huge numbers. I personally, I'm not a Stephon Diggs hater, but I don't see it that way. I think, if anything, this helps out Nico Collins even more, because Nico Collins, in my opinion, is the wide receiver 1 on that team. And Stephon Diggs being there has to keep the defense honest. It's kind of similar to Cincinnati, like with Higgins and Chase. You have 2 wide receivers, basically 1A and 1B, that you really, you can't just cover everyone in the field. They're going to burn you somehow. You have to kind of either pick your poison or choose how you're going to limit them. I think the Texans are going to have a very strong offense. And to be honest with you, see it being more of like a Nico Collins and a Jamar Chase role, and Stephon Diggs in a T. Higgins role, which there's nothing wrong with that. But in my opinion, I just think at this stage in his career, Stephon Diggs isn't going to be this wide receiver 1 over a guy who's kind of on the come up and has built great chemistry with a guy who's only been there for 1 year. So that's my thoughts on that. I don't think, Diggs is going to be bad at all, but I do think he's going to help open up the offense. He's going to get other guys open, because you can't just leave Diggs open. He's going to keep the defense honest. But I think getting him made people not totally realize just how much of a difference it's going to make in the way defenses have to approach the Texans offense now, because of the other guys outside of Diggs now as well. And then next is Tua. Tua's going to go A tier. I think he is pretty good. Have you guys seen the pictures though of Tua recently? I'm going to try and find them and put them on the screen, and if I don't, then I guess that's, this is awkward. But he slimmed down a bit. He has curly hair now. He looks I thought he was his brother, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm not sure why he slimmed down. I'm not sure if that was maybe just either he didn't like his playing weight, or maybe if it's some way for him to be a bit more mobile or not hit the ground as hard with his past head injuries. I don't really know, but I don't know, pretty cool. He's in a phenomenal offense, so he's gonna be A tier. I think last year the Dolphins just basically limped and crawled into the playoffs and then lost. They had so many guys hurt, especially on the defense as well, but the offense was banged up too. I think when healthy, the Dolphins are one of the best offenses to watch, to be honest. They're just so fun. It's with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle there. So, and Devon Achane now. So he's going to go A tier. Next is Bo Nix. And, okay, well, don't worry. Okay, there's going to be more people joining him in C tier, but he's going to go in the C tier. And I have a couple reasons why. Number one is I'm not super high on Bo Nix. And if you are high on Bo Nix, then that's fine. But this ranking probably doesn't make much sense to you, and that's okay if you see him as a B tier quarterback. For me personally, though, I don't really see... I can see how he is Sean Payton's guy for sure. I mean, for what Sean Payton wants to do, I can totally see how Bo Nix fits that role. But in the NFL, Bo Nix does not strike me as someone that's going to thrive in the NFL. I think... I'm not going to say he was a product of his surroundings in, Oregon, but I just his college career does not stand out to me. He's not a young prospect. He played against Justin Herbert in college. There's nothing to me that jumps off the page and goes, oh, this guy's going to help turn the Broncos around. So again, you lose Jerry Jeudy too. You have Cortland Sutton there. You have Tim Patrick back, I think. You have Marvin Mims. So you have weapons. You draft Troy Franklin, which I think is a great pick. It was Bo Nix's college teammate, and you get him pretty late in the draft too, so it's great value there. But I don't know. Here's what I will say though, because I've said some not great things about Bo Nix. I do think if Bo Nix ends up being a great quarterback, I don't see it being this year. I think this year is still the Broncos in the stage of trying to get the pieces to bring together for this offense. If Bo Nix ends up being the guy, I still don't think the team is going to have a big turnaround this year. I think if Bo Nix is the guy, next year, after a whole other offseason, then I think we can talk about where the Broncos could really land in the AFC. Because last year, they really did make a run at the playoffs at the end of the year. So if Bo Nix is the guy, then great pick. I am wrong, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do in the next couple seasons to help surround him. But this season, because I'm not high on him, I'm not super excited about his offense either. He's going to go C tier. And joining him in C tier is Deshaun Watson. And I'm going to be honest. I'm going to rephrase this so I'm very careful here. Before all the allegations against Deshaun Watson, I really liked Deshaun Watson in Houston. I thought he was a great player. He was super excited. I remember that playoff game with like him and Josh Allen when both were like relatively young, and it was a really fun game. But you go to Cleveland. He has not looked himself. Probably because you can't sit out a year from NFL football and then join back and still be that great. I think he has the injury. It's just like I don't know. I'm not sold on him. I think ever since he's come back, he's looked like a shell of his former self, and I think we see him this year. I think we see him next year, probably, and then maybe a whole season, maybe not, and then he just slowly kind of drifts out of the league because unless he lights it up this year, the Browns are going to have to think of a long-term option at quarterback other than Deshaun Watson. They're going to have to because you can't keep – the Browns are a great team. We saw it last year. This team's ceiling is very, very high in a very competitive conference, in a very competitive division, and this team has proven that they can play with the best of them. And if Watson comes back and it's evident that he is a big reason why they are being held back from competing with the best of the best again – you're going to have to look for that problem to be solved. So I'm not high on Deshaun Watson. I'm really not. Again, like Bo Nix, I will say, I said some not good things about Deshaun Watson. I will say some good things. If he does bounce back, Deshaun Watson's ceiling is very, very high in the NFL, and he's in a very good offense with a very good team around him. So if I just personally don't think it comes together. If it does come together, then Deshaun Watson's going to find himself probably as a high B tier, low A tier quarterback. So I'll throw that out there because it's always possible I'm wrong. And if I am wrong, then, defense you have to look out because Deshaun's pretty good. And he's got, he'll have Nick Chubb healthy at one point, but he still has, Jerome Ford and Deontay Foreman, I think, now in the running back room. You trade for Jerry Jeudy. You have Amari Cooper. Who did they draft last year? Is it Tillman? Is that his name? I cannot remember who they drafted. But yeah, and then you have David Njoku. You're in a great offense. It just relies on Deshaun getting back and looking like himself again. And joining him in C tier again is going to be Russell Wilson. I've just kind of given up on Russell Wilson. And here's the thing. He played fine in Denver last year, and I think he'll play fine in Pittsburgh. But I think that's really all that Russ has left. I don't think he's bad. He bounced back from his horrible year in Denver. But I don't think Russ has a whole lot more in the tank at this point. And Russ is going to find himself in a super competitive division. If this guy struggles like he did in Denver, it is going to be amplified times 3 with the defense he's going to be facing now. I mean, it was already, pretty tough in the AFC West. You have Max Crosby on an opposing defense. You have Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa on an opposing defense. You have Chris Jones. You had Trent McDuffie on an opposing defense for the Chiefs. Well, now you're going to be, going against Myles Garrett and that Browns defensive line, that Bengals defensive line. You're going to be going against the Ravens' entire defense. You have Kyle Hamilton. You have Roquan Smith. It's going to be very rough if Russ does not seriously show something. And to be honest, I just don't think he will because he doesn't have a whole lot left in him. And I'm excited to see what Justin Fields can do because that's the other thing. The Steelers are paying this guy $1 million. That is it. The Broncos are paying for the rest of it. If Russell Wilson struggles 4 or 5 weeks, there is not a single reason the Steelers need to keep him in there and cling on to hope. This is an old quarterback who you owe basically peanuts in, income to. So throw Justin Fields out there, see what he can do, and it's a young quarterback, a more dynamic quarterback, a higher ceiling quarterback, and a fresh start with better coaching. So Russ needs to be careful and he needs to play his best because I think he's on a short leash despite whatever Mike Tomlin says. I don't think he's going to have a huge margin for error this year than what's being said for him. And I really didn't realize the order of these quarterbacks, but Will Levis is also going in C tier. But here's the thing. Again, because this is the grading system. If these are rankings, Will Levis is very high C tier, low B tier. I think he not bounces back. I think he develops and kind of grows after last year. Because he totally showed flashes. I mean, this dude's arm is unreal. We already knew that. I think he's a bit inconsistent, and that's what I'm hoping to see more of this year from him, is more consistency. Because last year, there was flashes. Sure, he was making good plays, but he was all over the place. Sometimes the throw was right in the money. Other times it was going to a kid in the 8th row. So there was really no telling which Will Levis throw was going to happen. This year, though, you have Tyler Boyd, you have DeAndre Hopkins, you have the other older guy, Calvin Ridley. So I think it's a very solid receiving core. It's not a very young receiving core, but it's a very solid receiving core with a lot of experience, which will probably help Will Levis. I don't think it's going to be one of the worst offenses, but I don't think it's going to be exceptionally fun to watch either. So because of that, that's why I have them in C tier. I don't think Will Levis is going to light up with the guys around him. I think he's going to show promise, but you need to get some youth in there, see what you have for the future of this team. Because if they're great this year, great, but those guys, all three of them basically, don't have 4 more years to be, top of their game. So they need a long-term plan. But again, if this is what it takes to give Will Levis some confidence this year and see a lot of consistency and promise from him, then so be it. Good for Tennessee. And then breaking the streak of C tier is Josh Allen going into S tier. Josh Allen's great. I think he sometimes gets to be a little happy and be like, backyard football, throw the ball deep, triple coverage when it's like, could have just thrown it away. It was 1st and 10. But it makes for a fun football game to watch. And jokes aside, he's a phenomenal player. I mean, this guy is a huge running threat. He's tough to bring down, crazy arm. I mean, he really, like I've said before in videos past, the Bills were out of the playoffs toward the end of the year. They were not making it. And it was really just Josh Allen elevating that team and carrying them, was it 4 or 5 wins toward the end of the year to really jump back into the playoffs and unfortunately not get past the Chiefs ultimately, but still, he put together a phenomenal year. He proved why he is considered, a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, and I think he is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. He's going S tier. Daniel Jones is up next. I'm going to put Daniel Jones C tier. Look, last year, and Giants fans, okay, if you're going to come at me here, just know you can go back and watch my past offseason videos. I stuck up for Daniel Jones and the Giants. People were calling it a fluke year. I was like, no, Danny Dimes has arrived. He's confident with Brian Daboll in there. Good offense. And Danny Dimes basically just did the direct opposite of what I thought he was going to. Week 1, they get shut out. They have a cool comeback against the Cardinals. And other than that, they struggle a lot. And I just look, I think Daniel Jones is a okay player. He has shown in 2022 that he can be a good quarterback. And that's great. But if you're not doing it game after game to where your teammates and your coaches can rely on, what's it really for? Like, showing someone you're good at football every 6 games, that's not really doing anything. I mean, no job is guaranteed. I'm actually surprised he still has a job, to be perfectly honest with you. But I will say, and again, because I was just hard on Daniel Jones like I've done for other quarterbacks, the good thing for Daniel Jones, he's never necessarily been surrounded with great weapons. I think he's had okay weapons, but it's never been, it's really just been kind of Saquon Barkley, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a good Giants receiver somewhere in there. But it's never been someone where it's like, oh, wow, he's got a great offense and he's holding this receiver back. It's never really been like that. But now that you draft Malik Neighbors, there's a big opportunity for Daniel Jones, because for anyone, and I don't think there's a ton, but for anyone that is still sticking up for Daniel Jones and saying it's because of his lack of weapons, this is the year. If it is the lack of weapons, Malik Neighbors is going to get a ton of targets and volume. He is the guy on this team. They drafted him, 5th overall, 6th overall, something like that. I mean, he is by far the best receiver on this team. Saquon Barkley's gone, so even in the receiving game, underneath or whatever, maybe it's going to other guys, but the primary focus, every single play, should be for Malik Neighbors. This guy has crazy, crazy high potential. He could, his ceiling could be a top 10 receiver in the NFL, completely. I don't know if Daniel Jones unlocks that for him, but if it really is the lack of weapons around Daniel Jones, then this year should be a changing year for him. I hope he bounces back. I don't want anyone to be getting hurt. Like ACL tear, it sucks, especially for someone that's actually a pretty good athlete like Daniel Jones. I mean, it sucks for anybody, but especially someone who relies on their legs a lot like he does. So it's tough. I hope he bounces back, but I just don't see it. I'm officially out on Daniel Jones. So I'm sorry, Giants fans, if you're still a Daniel Jones believer. But I would love to be wrong. I really would, because I do like Daniel Jones as a player. Next is Jared Goff. He's going to go A tier. This would be a pretty, low S tier, high A tier quarterback, and we'll see that whenever, my rankings come out officially. But Jared Goff, I think, is phenomenal. He's in a great offense, and I don't want to say, because I've said in the past that, he doesn't totally elevate everyone around him, which I think is true to a certain degree, but I was probably a bit off when I said that, because he does a great job of finding holes in the zones, of finding guys underneath, of not panicking like we saw a couple times here and there in LA. So I love him in Detroit. I think he's awesome. He's brought a whole new culture. Well, not just him, really Dan Campbell, but he has really bought into that culture, and he's been their guy. And I hope they can get back to the NFC Championship. I think it'd be really cool, because Jared Goff's a great player. Amar St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Khalif Raymond. I'm forgetting someone else, because Khalif Raymond should not be the second guy to come to my mind at receiver. Jameson Williams, and they also drafted Sam Laporta. So they're in a great offense, and Goff is a massive, massive part of that. So props to him, one of the better quarterbacks in the entire NFL. And then Derek Carr. Derek Carr's going C tier, and here's why. Because first off, I don't like the Saints, but bias aside and jokes aside, seriously, I said last year I thought it was completely pointless for the Saints to go get him, because he wasn't someone that I felt was going to change this team and elevate this team. I didn't think he was going to hurt the team, but I thought he was going to be basically, the same as whenever they, left it and went out and got him. And I think that take aged fairly well, because Derek Carr didn't really hurt the team, but he didn't really do anything. He played quarterback solid. Statistically, he had an okay season. A lot of that came at the end of the year when the Saints were already out of playoff contention anyways. So I wish, he would have actually done that when the season mattered. But I think overall, Derek Carr is just kind of on his way out of the league. He can be a guy for you. I mean, he could be a nice bridge quarterback, but I am begging the Saints, you guys got to find a long-term quarterback. Derek Carr is not the answer. I would be surprised if Spencer Rattler was. There's got to be another plan. I never understood going on getting Derek Carr anyway. You didn't take your team forward. You didn't take your team backward. You just kind of stepped to the side and threw a new face in there to just achieve, just a mid-year again. So Derek Carr, I'm not a believer in. Kind of like Daniel Jones, I'm kind of out on both those guys this year. Next is Drake May. And look, Patriots fans, if you did not see my Drake May video I did, a few weeks ago, go check that out, because that's when I said all the great things about Drake May and all the weapons that the Patriots got for him in the draft. But he's going to go in C tier, because like I said for this video, I am weighing a quarterback's surroundings. And man, Drake May doesn't have a whole lot to work with. And here's the thing, because that video I did, I don't want to sound like I'm contradicting myself. That video I did, I talked about how the Patriots really drafted some great guys for Drake May, and they can be the future of this offense. I'm standing on that. I believe that is true. They didn't do that for Mac Jones. If they do it for Drake May, they will probably see more success by actually giving their quarterback guys to work with. But I don't think that all happens in year one. I've been very consistent with that line of thinking. Last year with CJ Stroud, I didn't think it all come together in year one. I was wrong. It did. A lot of times it doesn't come together in a huge year like he had, but, I was wrong about that still. I don't think the Patriots offense has Texans potential like last year. But then again, I didn't see it last year either, so maybe. But I just feel like the guys they got for him that I could see being big playmakers like Jalen Polk, like Javon Baker, I don't think they step up and have this monster year in year one. It's going to be a feeling out year for the Patriots. You got a new head coach in there. You have a new quarterback. You have pretty much a new offense as a whole. The defense is still awesome. A lot of guys returning back and healthy, like Matthew Judon, Christian Gonzalez, which is great. But offensively, you don't have a ton of experience in spots that there needs to be experience at. You have a lot of youth. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty, and there's going to be growing pains. And because of that, I don't see Drake May having a year like the guys in B tier. And just to be clear, I think Drake May is a better prospect than JJ McCarthy. I think if Drake May was in Minnesota, he would totally switch plays with JJ McCarthy and be a high B tier quarterback. But he's in a rough situation year one, and that's okay, because it doesn't define your entire career. But for a year one ranking, I gotta have him low on this list. And then next is Matthew Stafford. He's gonna go A tier, and this is when I have to admit that I was wrong, because last year I was out of Matthew Stafford. I didn't think he would bounce back well from his injuries. He had a lot of them. I thought, Cooper Kupp, still a great player, but he can't do it all on his own. And then out of nowhere, Puka Nacua steps up like crazy. Matthew Stafford plays incredible. Cooper Kupp is still a massive threat for him. It was an awesome offense, and I was completely wrong. I was very happy to be wrong. Matthew Stafford was awesome, and yeah, A-tier quarterback. I think he's one of the more underrated of the past 20 years, to be honest with you. And then next is Aiden O'Connell, who's going to end us off in the C-tier category. I don't have anything against him. I just don't really think he's the answer for the Raiders. And if he is, then they kind of found a bit of a hidden gem that way, because they already have their guy figured out with their new head coach. But to me, I see this as one of those like young bridge quarterbacks you just kind of throw in there because he's young, somewhat moldable, and you wait for a prospect to come that you really see as like your guy, and you go after him, because that's just, I don't see the Raiders trading for anyone after this year as like a veteran, but I think they look for youth with a new head coach, that they usually want that. So unless Aiden O'Connell really surprises me, which is always on the table, I do have him as being C tier, but hey, at least he has Devontae Adams and Cody Myers. It's still, a pretty good receiving core. But yeah, that's gonna do it for the video. If you guys enjoyed, be sure to subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. I do a ton of rankings like this. I also do more NFL content over players' teams. We're doing a in-depth team breakdown this offseason for every single team. I'll also do Madden videos. I'm going to do college football videos whenever that comes out in July. So it's always football content on the channel one way or another. We're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, so I would really appreciate, just clicking that button. It's free. It takes 1 second. And leaving a like too helps promote my content as well and kind of push that. So I appreciate all the support, but I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.